It all started with window tapping. I lived in a good area, but literally on the border of a different city that was deemed bad. Near my home, after all of this happened, I had found out there was basically a swarm of child sex offenders in the 7-mile radius into the neighboring city. Moving on. Late at night, I would hear tapping on my window. I never checked because no one just showed up at my window. I had lots of friends back then, but they all knew to call me first. As it kept happening, I kept getting more and more worried. I was about 15. My boyfriend at the time, when I was a sophomore, began sneaking into my house for the night. One of those nights I heard the tapping, but it was way too soon for it to be him, but it was enough that it sounded like it was to be expected. I had just gotten off the phone with him maybe 10 minutes prior to this. My bed is directly next to my window at this time, and those windows were shit and had a wicked draft. Anyone outside next to the window would have been able to hear my conversation clearly. I called my boyfriend back and asked if he was outside, and he said no. I told him to turn around and go home and texted him what happened. He tried to convince me it was nothing and it was my mind playing tricks on me. I started noticing being followed a couple of times a week, but never all the way home or for too long when I would walk home at night. I had to get home by 11 if I was walking, and 10 on a school night, so it's not like I was out at a crazy hour. It freaked me out enough to the point I didn't wear headphones anymore at night and was constantly watching my back. On to the very strange occurrences. These are 3 that are the most prominent, and in my eyes, most creepy. I was in my sophomore year of high school, and my boyfriend snuck into my house. It was about 3 a.m. He had just gone to bed probably an hour or so earlier. I still had a small light on, and my window was open because I was smoking a cigarette. I heard this creepy whistle that went from high-pitched to low-pitched, kind of like a slow sing-song. I was looking and saw a guy that looked like he was average build and seemed kind of tall, standing on the corner of my property watching me. I freaked out and slammed my window, drew the blinds, and hit the light. I didn't sleep that night, and I kept hearing rustling around near my window. 16, junior year, same boyfriend. He was the same height and roughly same weight as me. We easily looked the same from the back at night. Anyways, my boyfriend is coming through the neighbor's backyard and into mine. He comes up to the window, and as he's about 3 to 4 of the way in, I hear heavy boots in the grass. I look up, and as my boyfriend's in the room completely, I see either a masked or hooded man about 3 feet from my completely wide open window. I slammed my window immediately and freaked out. My boyfriend said he didn't know if he was being followed or not. This is where I was 100% convinced that the weird shit that was happening for the last 1.5 years was not coincidental or random or completely unrelated to me. It was directed at me. I was the center of the weird shit. At this point, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to tell my parents. If I told them that part of it, I'd get in trouble for sneaking my boyfriend into my room. But at the same time, some dude literally either A, thought my boyfriend was me and was going to grab me before I got into my room, or B, was going to jump into my room after me and do whatever he was intending to do that night. The final incident. And this part is equally as unsettling as the last one. I was sleeping one night. I was a month or 2 from turning 17. It was summer, hotter than hell, and I kept my door closed because I smoked pot and cigarettes, so the AC did not make its way into my room. Anyways, I was asleep in these tiny little shorts and sports bra. I was facing the window, and my bed at the time was right up against it. I woke up to the brightest flash of light. I jumped up, obviously freaked out, and heard running from the lower bed to the grass and to the pavement of my driveway. I saw the motion floodlight go off, but I could barely see anything because the flash had blinded me that badly. I don't know what happened after that. The window tapping stopped, the following stopped, no more flashes of light, no more whistling. It was just over. It still freaks me the fuck out that some weirdo has a photo of my underage self in minimal clothing, asleep in my room. It's probably online, and it's really quite unsettling, and still keeps me up at night on occasion. So, weird stalker dude that photographed me in my sleep as a teenager, let's not meet. About 5 years ago, me and my older sister went to a nature park. The Wetlands, so to speak. Of course we went at night so we could skateboard around, cause you aren't allowed to. But you know, a 14-year-old trying to look cool in front of her 24-year-old sister. Well, we went just around as the sun was setting. For a little bit we got lost, since the park was so huge and condensed with thick woods. We were trying to find the bridge, a 20-foot or so bridge so we can hang out just above the rushing river. By the time we got there, the sun was hardly visible over the mountains. I looked around after drinking my water, and here is where the creepy stuff happened. As I looked at the other side of the bridge, I see a tall, skinny figure. I first shrugged it off like it was a person, maybe a ranger of the park, but then it got on all fours and walked away. I didn't say anything at first, mainly because I thought it was maybe a bear. I looked back at my sister as we chatted about boys and many other things. Then I looked back at the end of the bridge. My sister did too, and we both saw the figure this time. At this point, I was totally freaked out. Mind you, it's still not dark out. The sky was purple and orange, so it wasn't like we were seeing things like when your mind pictures figures in the dark. No, it was right there and getting closer. I told my sister to get the hell out of there, her going first off the bridge and down the hill. I went second, and as I turned to look at the bridge again, it was 5 feet in front of me on all fours once again. It stood there as me and my sister skated off. And this isn't even the end. I told my sister to head to the main building since there are cameras and lots of light. We skateboarded for what seemed like hours. Every minute seemed to last an eternity. As we finally got to the main building, we finally stopped riding our boards. Out of breath and scared, we both looked around. By this time, it was pitch black outside. We made a mad dash to the car, taking a path we have never seen before, but it was outside the park, which made us feel safer. After we got to my sister's Jeep, we both got in, hearts racing and scared out of our minds. And when we tried to leave, the gate was locked, meaning we couldn't leave since there was only one way in and out of the park. We got even more scared. We tried everything to get out. We even thought about just leaving the car behind and walking the 2 hours home, but we drove onto the sidewalk and got out of the park. To this day, I won't go back to those wetlands ever again, even in daylight. Whatever that thing was, I never want to see it again. I can't stop thinking about it, and I'm almost 19. You can think this is just a story, but it really did happen. Me and my sister don't even talk about it to this day. Something changed between us. I could feel it after that day. Hello everyone. I'm going to tell you a story that happened to me when I was 18 years old. To give you some context, I had just come out of 3 months of confinement in a psychiatric hospital for addiction to cocaine and some mental disorders. When I left this hospital, I had nowhere to go. My family had thrown me out on the street, and the friends I may have had at school no longer spoke to me. I started a new life as a homeless person. I was extremely depressed, and I spent my days begging. And that's how I met Philippe. Philippe was around 55 years old, very tall and thin. He approached me. I was sitting on the street near a supermarket. He told me that he knew me, that he knew my name, and that he knew that I had just left the hospital. He told me that he worked with the hospital to monitor patients after discharge to make sure everything went well for them and help them if necessary. He told me that it was a volunteer organization, an organization which he always avoided giving me the name of. He offered to follow him to the store to buy me food, then go to his house to cook and get to know each other. I was completely hungry, and honestly, I was hoping to take advantage of his kindness a little bit. But I was very disturbed by all the information he knew about me. His story was crazy, but it was credible as the information was correct. Philippe and I quickly became good friends. He made me listen to old rock CDs and was very interested in me. He even introduced me to his daughter, who had 2 children. He very often brought them food and gave her money every time. He did his best to support me, sometimes putting his head on my shoulder, which I found very uncomfortable. He gave me an old phone so that I could contact him. He took me everywhere I wanted to go, and even bought my cannabis, which represented around $700 per month. But my state did not improve. Despite the help of Philippe, I remained incredibly depressed and suicidal, and always tried to return to drugs. And that's when Philippe started to change. He explained to me that he had been nice to me, but that was it. But that it was now time for him to act, and that was the role that had been given. He picked up my phone and started to be assertive. He took me to a higher floor in his building. This floor was uninhabited, but a bedroom was furnished with a double bed and a wardrobe full of old dresses and costumes. He explained to me that it will now be my room, that I could move around the building, but that I could not go out until he had judged that my condition allowed it. So I was a prisoner, and I was completely lost. I understood that something was wrong, but I still did not understand how he could know everything to this point. He had caught me in kind of a terrible mental manipulation, so I decided, at the beginning, not to react. I was still suffering from a lack of alcohol and drugs, and Philippe started to put valerian in my water. It was blue, and it calmed me down a lot, and I felt very relaxed and happy when he gave it to me. It lasted 3 days, during which he made me drink this, and I don't know why, but he strictly forbid me to enter his room or even to stay close when he opened the door. I never knew why, but he kept the key with him. During these 3 days, it showed itself closer and closer to me until it became definitely creepy. I started to push him away, and he would always say, "Hey, I just want to help you. Calm down. Look, your nervousness proves that you are not well." At the end of this 3rd evening, everything became horrible. I was so tired of his behavior towards me. I pretended that I did not feel well, and I was going up to his room, which I did because I really did not feel well. Once in the room, I fell asleep on the bed, as if knocked out. That same night, I have only one memory, and that of having vaguely woken up and seeing Philippe in his underwear on the doorsteps talking to me. And what he said to me I will never forget. "Oh, I knew it. Now that I see the fear on your face. But don't worry. Talk to me. Keep on talking to me, it's okay." I fell back asleep. When I woke up, I found Philippe next to me in the bed looking at me. I was terribly afraid and got out of bed in a panic. He stood between me and the door and told me that he had come down to comfort me to sleep. It made no sense. I pushed him as hard as I could, and his head hit the top of the door. He fell, and I went down the stairs to go to his apartment in search of the building key, which he had fortunately left on the table with his cigarettes. I took them and ran away. But the story does not end there. After that, I took a train by fraud to go back to a city about 250 kilometers from Philippe's house. I went to an old friend's house and I explained my homeless situation to her without speaking of Philippe. She accepted to host me for about a month. I felt safe at home because she lived in a small building and all the neighbors were very friendly. The atmosphere was good. But one evening, when I went into the kitchen, I noticed a car parked in the parking lot in front of the building with Philippe behind the wheel. Panicking and angry, I got out and started hitting his car, screaming and asking him what he wanted from me. He told me that it was his duty to protect me, that people knew me and that they wanted to harm me, and that I was not safe where I am, and that is why he has been watching me for over a week from his car. For over a week? It was too much. I started to scream more and got the attention of the neighbors. Following this, I broke contact with all the people I knew on loan or from afar and started a new life. I turned to helpers and took control of my life. I have already returned to Philippe's home, and it is uninhabited. I went to his daughter, who still lived there. She explained to me that Philippe was not her father, but that he considered her his daughter, and that she had met him outside a center for battered women. She also told me that I was not the first youngster Philippe had taken under his wing. I told her the whole story, and she seemed very uncomfortable and pretended that she was expecting somebody. Today, I never saw Philippe again, and years later, by resuming contact with my family, I learned that my mother had at the time twice called the police for finding an individual in the garden observing the house, an individual corresponding to the profile of Philippe. All this took place in 2011.